pursuit of the duty of that learning of the duty of the moment was really something that came in fits and starts and, you know, through a lot of struggle, but eventually reached a certain sort of cruise speed, cruise control, where it was happening without so much effort and without so much failure. And then, lo and behold, I realized that once I was doing what I had to be done when it had to be done, instead of waiting, it liberated like a ton of time, relatively speaking. I still have 9 kids, to read and write and exercise and even watch a little bit of TV. Not a lot, but just enough to make me feel like I'd done my work and now I could rest and I could relax. And so I learned through that practice that the busier your life is, the more self-mastery you need to attain that freedom to do other things. But as I said before, this is not something that comes naturally to me. It comes naturally to some people, but I'm not one of them. And these people are probably more successful than I am. But the good thing for you is that I got to learn a lot of lessons that I'm still currently learning that I get to share with you today. The first thing I learned about self-discipline is that a little goes a long way. And so lofty goals, they're good, but sometimes they can be too lofty, especially when you have a bunch of little kids and your life happens in the here and now. Last September, I had a miscarriage and I had an important blood loss that sent my autoimmune condition into overdrive. And so my entire physical health went pear-shaped. And so I learned important lessons about lofty goals, and that sometimes for some of us, if you do not have mental or physical health, it takes a lot of self-discipline to set up goals that are manageable. You know, setting up goals that you have no hope to achieve is not self-discipline. This is just delusion, right? You learn self-discipline by doing, and so you need to set up goals that are manageable for you at your state, you know, in life. If you have young children that are putting a lot of demands on your body and your mind, that's a consideration. If you are not physically healthy or mentally healthy, this is a consideration. I know that with my autoimmune condition, I have flares, and flares often come with periods of depression. And so what I find is that in these periods of flares, when I'm physically and mentally in a depressed state, I need to cut down my everything to sizes that I can manage. And there is self-discipline in recognizing your limits. Self-discipline is about the things you can control. There's no self-discipline controlling something that you have no control over, right? And so in the context of parenting, you know, any goals that you set up for yourself or even for your family, any goals that you set up that leaves you on the side of the road for dead, this is not good, right? You need to be there for your children, and that includes not being chewed up and spit out on some corner somewhere. And that leads me to my second point, is that you can adapt. You are not a machine. So there are periods in your life where you may have to change your goals, make them smaller, and maybe there are periods in your life when you can change your goals and make them bigger. So recently for me, a work deadline forced me to rejig my entire schedule and change priorities and change, you know, and so that's changed for the next couple of months. Work is my priority, and I'm still learning. I still take a whole bunch of commitments with friends. Oh yeah, sure, come on over, we'll have a play date. And my husband, who is my boss, looks at me and goes, and you're gonna write when? And I'm like, oh, right, you know? And so we need to adapt, and it takes a bit of time to adapt, but we're adaptable, right? I was listening to a podcast interview with Khaled Hosseini, who was the author of the monumentally successful book, The Kite Runner, and others. But when he wrote The Kite Runner, he was a full-time practicing working physician. And so I'm hearing this interview where somebody mentions him, and it was like, well, he got up at 4 a.m. every morning to write because he didn't have time to write. He was a full-time working physician. He had to make time to write. Well, I'm sorry, but successful writers have no more abilities to make time than the normal Joes like us, right? You don't make time. You carve it out of something else, right? If you're getting up at 4 a.m. to write, my guess is that you're borrowing a few hours of sleep to write. That's okay. That's what I mean. You rejig, right? You're not inventing anything. You have to be able to recognize that there's 24 distinct blocks in your day, right? And you get to reorganize them, but you don't get to add more blocks.